Hello, welcome to video 4 of the Mastering the Nerves course, Finding the Rocket Fuel. In the last video we spoke about unhooking from the content of our mind. Some of that content, of course, is helpful, but sometimes not. And I suppose by unhooking we maybe give ourselves a bit more of a choice as to how we respond to whatever it is we face in that moment, whatever performance domain we're in. So I guess what can guide our actions in such moments when we've unhooked? What can help us navigate these choice points, I suppose? And also, what if we took it one step further and considered how we actually want to show up in our performance domains, our performance arenas, despite our feelings of anxiety or nerves? In fact, what if in those moments when we feel anxious and nervous, what if those are actually opportunities for us to start stepping forwards and being who we most aspire to be? Or, put simply, what if those moments are the opportunities for us to live by our values, through our actions, embodying what we most care about in the face of our nerves and anxiety? So therefore, perhaps understanding how our nerves and values are closely tied together may actually be helpful. Like Jack, a 29-year-old professional rugby player who, having been a regular starter in the first team for a few seasons now, was increasingly being involved in the squad's senior leadership team. And he was finding that his views were being listened to, and he was having a bit more of a say as to what happened around the training ground, as well as how the team manages what happens on the pitch on match days. And whilst Jack, I suppose, was welcoming of this transition to, I suppose, a more senior and respected role within the squad, he described how he often felt nervous on match days, worrying he'll make mistakes, losing the respect of his teammates and management, and I suppose at worst his position within the squad. And as the season went on, he found he'd increasingly worry about his performances in the days before a match. And I suppose that would often distract him from being at his best in training and preparing in the ways that he knew worked best for him. However, what struck me about Jack was that Jack knew that the answer here didn't lie, I suppose, in reducing or removing his nerves, and I guess he knew that was futile. In fact, Jack's sense was that maybe these nerves tell him something about himself that he might benefit from considering. You see, Jack was aware that being a bit of an elder, if you like, in the squad, looking out for and mentoring younger players and stepping up in the big moments were all part of the kind of person Jack really wants to be. They're his values, like freely chosen, not enforced upon him by anyone else, just simply who Jack most aspires to be. If you like, they're the principles that guide his actions. I wonder what your values are. Now, we will explore them in a bit, but perhaps it's worth spending a minute or so making sure we're clear on the difference between goals and values. Because here we're not talking about what it is you want to achieve in your sporting life or career, to win X or get into the first team and so on. We are talking about something else, something different. So a goal is maybe best thought of as an end point, a hoped for outcome or destination. So goals athletes often set are, well, I suppose kind of like what I've just said, to get into the first team, maybe to reduce my handicap by a couple of shots, or I don't know, to run a park run in less than 25 minutes. So I imagine you may have your own goals for your circumstances. But values on the other hand are different. Values are, as I've said already, freely chosen qualities of action. They're the characteristics we'd most like others to see in us and for us to see in ourselves. Not because we think it'll make others happy or we'd get their approval, but because, well, I suppose that isn't freely chosen. But instead because they're the kind of, they kind of tickle a part of us that's most like us, I guess. And if you were to look back over your career, or even over the past week or month or year, and if you had shown these qualities of action and how you conducted yourself, you'd probably feel kind of proud, because again, they speak to a part of us that is most, genuine and authentic. So some values we might have are, for example, to be a good teammate on and off the court, to be someone who treats others with respect, regardless of age or background and viewpoints and so on, to trust myself and commit even when I want to run away, like when feeling nervous, or to do what I'm doing to the best I can, given the circumstances, and so on. And we'll get to yours shortly. But perhaps the key difference here between goals and values is that goals mark a destination, like these pinpoints on a map, whereas values can keep on going. Sure, you can make it into the first team if circumstances work in your favour along with your own effort, but there'll always be the next moment which challenges you to act with respect and integrity, commitment, dignity, whatever your values are. You will never become the walking, talking definition, for example, of respect, integrity, commitment and dignity. There will always be another opportunity for you to try and embody them in some way, shape or form. It's almost like a never-ending road, but one that can give us a sense of purpose as we face up to and perform with our anxiety and nerves, rather than trying to remove them and get rid of them. And before we look at your values, I just want to put a little word of warning out there. Values are not rules. They're not written in the stars that you absolutely must act according to them in all situations, and if you ever slip up, then you failed. I mean, treating values in that way is just a surefire way of finding yourself back in a hole, clutching on to your spade. Instead, I guess, see them as flexible and useful guidelines for navigating situations. Maybe, I guess, treat them like you would treat a pen. You hold the pen suitably, it works fine for you, yeah? But if you hold it like a maniac, channeling your inner toddler, and you grip the pen so tightly, then the pen isn't going to be much use to you. Or at least the task of writing is going to be a little bit trickier. So hold your values lightly. Yes, they might shift and they look different in different contexts, like match days and different in training days and different when you're traveling with a team or even when you're at home. And that's fine, that's normal, but we hold them lightly. Values are not rules, they are flexible guidelines to help us navigate any context. So let's take some time now to start looking at your values, and you may be getting a bit of a sense of them from the previous slides, or maybe you're still not sure, and that's okay, by the way. It's worth spending a bit of time really thinking about them though, and not just thinking about them, but feeling them too. I mean, remember I mentioned the sense of pride in a couple of slides ago when we're living by, or if we were living by our values. So when we hit upon our values, there can sometimes be a swelling of emotions or feelings, and almost like an that's what I want, that's who I want to be. That's, it's almost like a sense of motivation maybe that swells up in us. So take your time with these exercises that I've got here on the screen. I mean, think about them, but also be curious as to how you, I guess, react emotionally to them. I mean, ultimately here we're mining for rocket fuel, and there's no right or wrong answer. So take your time with them and get curious about what shows up for you. So let's go through these. The first one, we're going to spend some time reflecting on who you admire most in your sport. You might know them, you might not know them, it doesn't really matter, but who might you admire most in your sport? And what is it about how they behave or conduct themselves, particularly in the big moments, that you most admire? And I wonder what that maybe tells you about what's important to you, about how you want to show up when things get challenging, despite nerves or anxiety. And I wonder what that would look like if you were to embody that. And of course, you might want to pause the video and just consider these questions in your own time, being curious about what shows up, both as thoughts but also as some feelings and emotions. And then secondly, imagine someone important to you was watching as you stepped into your respective performance arena. someone who truly has your best interests at heart and wants the best for you, what would you hope they'd see in you as you stepped out? What might they admire most about you? And how would that look to them, I suppose, as you stepped into the arena? What would they see? And being specific about that. And again, you might want to pause here to consider these questions and consider any sort of those thoughts and feelings that show up. And finally, imagine your sport and your abilities were taken from you overnight, and you could no longer participate and compete in the way that you do. How would you feel? What would you miss most about it? And again, what might this suggest is important to you? And if you would take what was important to you there, and if you were to embody this in your actions, in your behaviour, particularly in those big challenging moments, what would that look like? And once more, you might want to pause and reflect on some of those questions. So there's a few ways there of getting a sense of our values as we step into our respective performance domains. Now that we've maybe got a sense, or beginning to get a sense of our values, let's just do another activity. And you'll need a piece of paper. It doesn't need to be too big. I guess a post-it note is fine. And with a pen, write on the paper on one side something that your mind often says to you when you're feeling anxious or nervous in your sport. And I guess if you can't think of anything, you can just write the word anxiety or nerves. And then once you've done that, turn the post-it or the paper over to the other blank side. And there's a phrase out there that I really like, and I think it's relevant here. And it's this, that in your pain, you'll find your values, and in your values, you'll find your pain. I like that. So if we were to spend a bit of time thinking about it, we can probably resonate with that. Those with kids care about their kids and will often have a wide range of so-called negative emotions as their children bumble through life. Others will no doubt feel the same about dearly loved pets and so on. We hurt where we care, and we care where we hurt. So going back to the blank side of the paper again, and now thinking though about your values. Which of your values that you're maybe starting to get a sense of from the previous exercises may explain the presence of the pain on the other side of this piece of paper or post-it note, in this case nerves? Which value explains the presence of the pain on the other side of that note? And maybe we can see that our anxiety or nerves are intricately tied to things that we really care about. And take a moment to then consider, would we really want to, do a deal with the devil and remove our anxiety and nerves if it meant also losing what was on the other side of that paper? Would our sport mean the same to us? Would our teammates, our support staff and significant others mean the same? Probably not. A lot of the passion and the meaning that our sports brings to our lives may disappear too. So as we spoke about way back in session 2, perhaps nerves isn't a problem to be solved, but something to be lived with, a marker or a reminder that you care. This is important to you. This matters. So really our challenge is to, again, not to run away from or control our anxiety or nerves, but maybe to use our values to guide how we show up whenever these anxiety and nerves show up. In those moments when we step into our respective performance arenas, maybe we can use our values to guide our behaviour and not be put on that roller coaster of our thinking self. And I think the mental push-up for this session challenge us or challenges us to do just that. So in summary, I think for me, getting in tune with and understanding and being clear on what our values are is like rocket fuel. And goals and values are different from each other. Goals are set destinations, outcomes that we most long for, I suppose, whereas values are freely chosen qualities of action. We can never become a value. We can never reach a value. We'll never become the dictionary definition of a value. There will always be another opportunity in which to embody that value, and it might look differently from how you embodied it just 5 minutes ago. And we also spoke about how our values and difficult thoughts and emotions are inherently tied. We hurt where we care, and we care where we hurt. And maybe then being clear about the values we care about, the qualities of our character that we most value, can help us, I guess, face up to and navigate those times when we're feeling most anxious in our performance domain. And maybe our task then is to try and embody those values despite the thoughts and the difficult feelings that we're having, practicing to unhook, not for unhooking for its own sake, but doing so as a way of living by our values in our chosen performance domain.